Hey everybody, it's Emily. Welcome to another Grass River microclass. So today we're going to talk about a very interesting plant that we get a lot of questions about in the spring. And that plant is common horsetail. It also is sometimes called equisetum after its genus. This plant belongs to the oldest plant lineage on the entire earth. And it's got really interesting biology and some neat characteristics that we're going to talk about today. Alright, so let's do a little bit of background on horsetails if you're not familiar with them, which many people aren't. They often go overlooked. So horsetails are in the group of plants called pteridophytes. So that includes ferns and fern allies. And by fern allies, we just mean things that are closely related to ferns. They don't necessarily look a whole lot like ferns. So fern allies are things like horsetails, and then also club mosses, if you're familiar with ground cedars. Some people call them ground pines or those lycopodium plants. And then some other very sort of obscure plants like moonworts and quillworts. So what makes a pteridophyte is that it is a vascular plant. So by vascular we mean it has a xylem and a phloem. It has sort of a system. You can think of it as like our vascular system, like our bloodstream. There are vessels sort of within the plant. They're specialized structures that move water. And in vascular plants that's the xylem and the phloem. But in addition to being vascular, pteridophytes are seedless plants. So they do not reproduce by seed. Instead, they reproduce by spores. And there are two main differences between reproducing by seeds and reproducing by spores. Seeds are multicellular, so they include not only, the tiny baby embryo plant, but they also include some nutrients or things that the plant needs in order to grow. Spores, on the other hand, are just one cell. It's just the tiny, tiny, tiny baby plant, just the genetic information. Speaking of genetic information, that's the second major difference between seeds and spores. Seeds have the same amount of chromosomes as the parent plant, right? They get one set of chromosomes from the male plant, one set from the female plant, their parents in sexual reproduction, and then the seed has 2 copies of each chromosome. Spores only have 1 copy of each chromosome because they are just basically like tiny little clones of the parent plant, but they are haploid cells, which means they just have 1 copy of each chromosome. What's cool about horsetails, though, and specifically in terms of pteridophytes, is that there are 15 species worldwide. We have 8 of them here in northern Michigan. So we have over half of the species diversity of horsetails in the entire world right here in northern Michigan. So it's a good plant to know. So I mentioned earlier that horsetails are belong to one of the oldest lineages of plants in the world, and that's especially true of common horsetails, also called field horsetail, which is the one we're going to look at today. So that plant's ancestors were called calamites, and they lived as long ago as 350 million years ago. So that's like late Devonian, in the Carboniferous period, around there. That's like way before dinosaurs even existed. And actually, a lot of the coal deposits that exist on Earth today are mostly comprised of fossilized calamites. That's how prolific they were. Oh, I forgot to mention, they could grow up to 100 feet tall. So there were these like giant horsetail-like plants that just like dominated swamps way long ago before the dinosaurs even existed.
All right, so what's unique about common horsetail is that there are 2 different forms to it. So both of these forms emerge from the same underground root structure, but in the early spring, common horsetail sends up what are called fertile stems. And they look like this. They don't even look like plants, right? They're always sort of a pale brown or tan. They can even be whitish in color. And they have got these really complicated sort of like cone-looking structures up here at the top. And those are the fertile stems. So what's happening is that in those cone-like structures, which are actually called strobili, the singular is strobilus, they have spores in there. So tons and tons and tons of spores are being released and scattered by the wind in those fertile stems, and then they will die back after, you know, not very long, just about a week, maybe a little bit over a week. These ones are definitely on their way out. And then horsetail will send up its sterile stems, which is what exists as the above ground plant matter for the majority of the year. And let's see if I can show you guys just over here. We have some of the baby sterile stems that are starting to grow. They'll get much bigger than this. They can get up to 2 feet tall, and these branches will get a lot longer, but they're always going to be in whorls like that. They're always going to all be coming out of the same spot on the stem. And notice these nodes too, and these sort of sheaths with teeth that the stem sort of fits together like a bunch of puzzle pieces. That is the same on the sterile stem and on the fertile stem over here. They both have that.
All right, so if you didn't know before what those weird sort of like tan asparagus looking things are that come up in the spring are, now you know. They are the fertile stems of common horsetail. And I found these guys right along Finch Creek. They often like moist soil to get established, but then you can often also find them growing in like disturbed sites like roadsides, or often in fields, hence the other common name field horsetail. So you can find these guys in a wide variety of environments as long as it's relatively sunny. They don't tolerate full shade. But they often grow in clumps too, so where you find one, you'll find several, and that's because in addition to reproducing via spores, they also will grow via rhizomes, so those little like creeping horizontal roots, and then they can send up new shoots from there. So you often get a clump of them that are actually part of the whole same root system. All right, that's it for this week. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.